and they started losing them. They started disappearing, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they fired the plant manager, and they got a new one in there, and they said, you got to figure out what's going on here. We're losing a bunch of inventory. We don't know where it's going. Our numbers are getting all screwed up. That person went in, couldn't figure out what was happening, thought maybe someone was stealing stuff, built a fence around the factory. Problem still happened. They fired that person. They hired a new boss to come in. This person at this point realized there are 2 people fired before them. They're, on their edge. Okay, I don't know what to do. They dug in. They finally figured out that what they were doing is there was a shift supervisor or something who was compensated on the production of the plant. And what they were doing every day is, in the middle of the night, they were going down to the finished product, and they were picking up the pallets and going and putting it back on the conveyor belt. So they got counted twice so that they got their bonus. It's a tricky one, huh? It's fun. And another little thing to keep in mind here too is that a lot of times, sometimes you want to use incentives. Some people are motivated by incentives. That's just how they're wired, and that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. You just want to be really careful. And in a lot of cases, the people that are motivated by incentives are the smooth talkers. And so you give them an incentive to do something, and then what do? They talk people into stuff by promising a little more than you can really deliver. This whole fight that happens between the sales team and the manufacturing department or the technical team that actually has to deliver the thing that the salespeople sold. A lot of this comes down to incentivized, performance-based behavior. I prefer to find stars who, that's just not really how they operate. They know that in the long run, if they perform, they're going to get the check, they're going to get the value, it's going to work out for them. It's going to be fine. And of course, share the wealth, of course, share the proceeds that come so that everyone looks around and says, yep, this is fair, this makes sense. Be very careful with incentives. They do not work out logically the way you think they are going to. A couple of tips for creating systems. Number 1, hook the whole thing up and run it. You got to hook up all the pieces and run it. Turn it on in some way and see how it performs. Measure the performance. Then make guesses about what it's going to do in the future. Next, track results over time visually. We already covered that. Don't delude yourself by just reading the high points. Put the numbers up. Show them to your team. Be open and honest with everyone about what's going on. Proactively look for unintended consequences. Expect them. Whenever you fire something new up, start asking questions like, all right, everyone, what's happening that we weren't expecting? What are some of the things that came up? One of the things that I do inside of our team is I talk a lot about the idea of how anyone that finds a problem is a winner. If you find a problem in our system and you raise your hand and you say, I found a problem over here, you're a winner. We won't kill the messenger. In fact, we say, this person found a problem and it saved us a lot of money. It really helped us out. Because every business has problems. But what do people do? Well, they don't want to be punished. So what happens when you're working in a regular business that's not one of the types of businesses that we run in here, regular company, political, a lot of games, incentivized behavior, a lot of drama, and you make a mistake? What do? What's the first thing you do? Hide it. Right. What's the second thing you do? Try to fix it. Good. So you hide it, and then you try to fix it. Now, if something goes wrong, if you screw something up, are you probably the right one to fix it? And I don't know, but I don't think it takes a NASA rocket scientist to figure out that the person that isn't able to do it right maybe should give that to somebody else. So if they've isolated and run off in their cave and now they're working on the thing, what are they probably doing? Making it worse. Deming said, drive out fear. Drive out fear. So you have to drive out fear. You have to get rid of that fear that you're going to be punished if something goes wrong. And you have to be light about it. When someone screws up something big, you got to suck it up and laugh and say, you know what, we all have bad days, it's okay, and go cry in the corner. Cry to yourself later. When you want to change a result, go to work on the system, not the symptom. Work on systems, not symptoms. And then the two biggies. Focus on what's working. Focus on the strength. Focus on what you're getting that's positive and develop and grow that. Don't focus on your weakness. If you're trying to do one thing and all of a sudden this other thing takes off and is successful, follow the success. And next, look for bottlenecks or constraints. Those can be the key that unlocks a magic door to a lot of growth. Every system has a place where it gets squeezed down and there's a little constraint. Look for those. Seek them out. I want to share a very important, very critical, very, very important, very critical idea that I've discovered over the years in business. Is everybody familiar with central planning, the concept of central planning? Anyone know what that means? Okay. Well, central planning is a philosophical approach to running an economy. And a lot of countries have tried it, and it was very popular last century. And what governments thought is, well, if we plan everything and we control all of the resources, then everything will run efficiently. And it didn't really seem to work out because most of those economies eventually fell, went under, became bankrupt. And the ones that are still holding on and trying it are really experiencing a lot of problems. When you try to control something too much, the paradox is that it doesn't work. It's like taking a human and saying, I am going to control you and you are going to do it my way. There's something about that system that just says, I don't behave that way. I don't perform when I'm being controlled. And strong business people, especially people that come from big company backgrounds, in a lot of cases, want to do what I call planning the success. They want to plan the whole success as it's going to happen. And if you grow your company and you run into strong business people, you're going to have them ask you to plan out the success of the future and to tell them what's going to happen. How much are we going to sell a year from now? So we can allocate all these resources and create a budget for that. And you're going to turn to them and you're going to say, I have no idea how much we're going to sell in a year. And they're going to say, well, you have to know. That's the way they do it in big businesses. The difference, I want to kind of suggest a way of approaching this that is a great blend, I've found, or a great balance. So instead of saying, here's the next step we're going to take, we're going to make this plan, we're going to take this step, and then we're going to take this step, and then we're going to take this one, and we're going to increase our results by this much, and then this next one we're going to take is also going to do that. And then if things aren't working, try to stick to the plan, because that's what's always blamed when things don't work out. Well, we didn't stick to the plan we made, and that's why it didn't work. Instead of doing that, say, okay, where do we want to go? What would have to be true to get there? What would have to work? And test something as fast as you can. Try to get some results from a test so that you can then model and project. And what I like to do is I like to set up my first system, paradoxically, with as few conditions as possible. I try to put as few as I can and still have it be successful. Why do I like to do that? Because I want to see how the people are going to behave. I want to see how the system's going to behave. I want to see what it will do all by itself. And if you do that, you'll learn a lot. If you try to control it too much and control every aspect of what's going to happen with something brand new that you've never done, you won't be able to see what's happening. You'll be too stuck in trying to plan all of your success. So with all of the people that are going to be saying to you in your future as you grow a successful company, we got to plan it. What's the next thing? And how much money are you going to make here? And I mean, only on Wall Street and in investment bank projections does the sales line always go up. It doesn't happen in the real world. Say, here's an idea. Let's test. We'll run this test. If the results are between here and here, then we've got a winner. You've got to test it. And that goes for everything. If you've got a new marketing campaign, do not spend a whole bunch of money on this marketing campaign and design and layout and getting all the placement right and then run it. Spend $200 and see if anyone calls. If no one calls, then don't blow the thing up. Things are probably not going to work big if they don't work small. One of the metaphors that I like to use is, I read in this great book, and Ralph on our team, who's in the back there, comes from Boston. He always uses this term. Anyone here from Boston? Yeah? You know how the streets of Boston were created? They paved over the cow paths. Right? So the road system, I read this in The Path of Least Resistance, great book. The cow paths in Boston follow the sensibilities of the average 17th, 16th century cow. And if you've ever been there and walked around and driven around, you can see what I'm talking about. Right? They're just, it's a mess. Anyone ever been to Prague? Prague. It's close to Boston in terms of the roads. Right? They probably did the same thing, I'll bet, in maybe around the same period, maybe 1,000 years earlier. Well, a farmer on our team was telling me about the University of Oregon. He and I both grew up in Oregon. And he was telling me a story about how at the U of O, back 100 years ago, some brilliant genius laid the whole campus out and put all the buildings to the campus, but didn't put down the sidewalks. And then let the students go, and then watch where they walked automatically, where they made their own paths, where it was natural to go from building to building. Who travels from what building to where, what paths naturally where. And then once the paths had created themselves, then they said, okay, now we know where to put the sidewalks. So they put the important conditions in place, and then they ran the system, and they saw what happened, and then they say, okay, this is the way things would naturally run. That's the way I like to do things. Try to put the important conditions in place and then set it up and stand back and see what happens, see how the people behave. One of my favorite things to do is to take a new person that's coming to work with the team and just turn them loose. Say, okay, here's someone you can talk to if you have questions, or me. Here's a project you can work on. Just let me know how it's going. It can be frustrating, it can be challenging to some people, but you really learn a lot about people in those moments. You get to see who they really are, how they're really behaving. People that come from environments where everything was figured out for them. Here's your job description, here's your role, a lot of times those people can't function in an entrepreneurial, open-minded, fast growth environment. They just don't know what to do. They shut down. A lot of times they thrive. A lot of times they show up. I'll tell you a story about Ralph tomorrow, but when Ralph showed up to our business, and I mean, there was no delay between when he showed up and the change. It was an instantaneous cultural shift that happened of organization. First time he sat down at a meeting, we used to sit down and we'd get together once in a while at, wherever, at a restaurant or somebody's house, and we'd try to gather together and talk. And he sat down and he said, who's taking the minutes for the meeting? And we all looked around like, uh-oh. Daddy just got home, I guess, huh? The fun police are in the house. And we got that stupid look on our face, and Ralph said, I'll do it. And he opened up his computer, and gently, but firmly, we would talk about something, and he'd say, okay, so what happened there? Is that a topic that's going to be ongoing? Is it something we just decided something on? And he'd write it down. And then the next time we got together, he opened up the computer, and he said, okay, well, there were a few things that were open that we were working on, so let's get some updates. And it was dramatic. It was incredible. Some people who are from those other environments, who have worked in those other environments, thrive because they can help take the best of what's been figured out in big business and incorporate it into your small business. So I recommend that you take those folks, give them a little bit of leeway, see what they can do, see how they perform. Okay, good. look down at your list, look over the things you just learned about systems thinking. Hopefully, that was the most difficult stuff that we're going to cover this program, the most challenging and complex and weird. Hopefully, it was simple enough that you could understand it. Put a little star next to the thing that you can use. Maybe write a one-line action plan of something that you can take and use immediately. All right, quickly. Who had a big breakthrough aha today, a big realization of something they're going to be able to take back and make some money with? I mean, really, go make some serious money in their business. Raise your hand if you had a big breakthrough idea. Okay, good. Who had one that they'd be willing to share? Oh, whole different question, huh? You had one?
I learned about free stuff today, and that's what I'm going to do with my product, is to develop something that I can give away for free to generate interest. So that's my big aha. Thank you.
Good one.
Well, I think everyone here saw what my big breakthrough was. It took you only a couple of minutes to demonstrate that I was looking through the wrong end of my telescope. I could see the small focus. I knew what I knew, but I couldn't see the big picture. And you turned my scope around. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Ira.
And I can't even begin to list a lot of things that I learned today, from the mindsets to the techniques. But the two things that I think I walked away with in this program right now is, first is the hiring. Like, I've been hiring people that I like or that are like me, and within 30 days, true as you said, they end up not performing well to what my expectations are. So I learned that, and I probably think that's like $1 million lesson. Will save me a couple of years. And second thing I liked is the diagram that was shown about the low potential, low performance and stuff. Is I've been focusing too much on the low performance and low potential, getting them to be becoming high performance and high potential, that I neglect the ones that are already performing well. And just that little shift in the way I see things, I think will make a big improvement.
Very good. Good. Thank you.
4 quick key takeaways. My name is Marlene Green. The first one is to only hire A people, stars. Don't compromise. That's huge. The second one is to have multiple teams running where you're not at the center. Really big for me. The next one is when you talked about having daily updates and the 3 questions to ask. That's just so simple. The other is hiring people who have corporate training, because they've been trained by the best already. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Marlene.
Hi there, Guy Morgan, San Diego. The big aha I think I got today had to do with the marketing, the advertising, and the communication with the customer. What struck me was the comment that you've got to lead the people to believe that they've discovered what you're going to share with them. That was a big one. That really made a big shift for me in the customer communication. I thought I kind of knew how to communicate and create action, but if you can let the people believe that they've discovered the answer to their pain or their problem, and maybe share with them sort of your experience and how you sought it out and discovered it, I think that's going to be very, very powerful.
Good one. Nice closer. Thank you very much, Guy. I want to point something out here that I hadn't really intended to talk about in the program, but a lot of people are, in my opinion, a little bit too idealistic about what it's going to take to change yourself and do your business. I once heard a guy who I used to work with, he used to say, it took you all these years to put all the knots in your rope, and you can't take them out in a day or in a few days. It takes a little while to do it. Another thing that I find interesting is that anything you want to learn takes typically a few years at least to get really good at it. And so for your own sake, what I'd like you to do is maybe just reflect on whether or not it would be worth it for the long term, for the rest of your life, to invest a few years in learning how to make your business really great. Learn to become a real expert in business, an expert leader, an expert at the next level. And there's always a next level. But for a while, maybe this next level could be the one that you want to go to. So are you willing to invest a couple of years in your own life in order to take your business really up to the next level so it can take care of you for the long term? That's what we call the Randy Watson right there. That boy good. Are you really serious about this? Are you willing to commit to yourself for at least a couple of years? To learn everything, take it to the next level. Okay, good. So make that commitment to yourself because you're the one that it's important to. Whether or not you succeed, it truly is not going to make a huge material difference in my personal life or in the individual personal lives of the people around you. It's going to make a difference to you in your life. And if you take more of that responsibility and you make more of that commitment to yourself for the long term, to get on a track of real development, get on a track of really surrounding yourself with people like this, really masterminding, really just filling your brain with a lot of good information, letting go of those negative kind of influences in your life and filling your life with more positive influences, I think you can do a lot. By the way, just a quick little informal survey here. I'm trying to figure a lot of things out. I went up and made a quick little video last night. I'm going to start surveying a lot of the people on the list. What do you, personally, this is just between us, little small group of people here, what do you find more valuable? Do you find more valuable the training and the education aspect of what we're doing here? Or do you find more valuable the masterminding, being able to connect with other people, talk to, run over to me, ask me a question, talk to people on my team, talk to the other experts that are here? Which part do you find more valuable? 50-50? Who finds the education and the training part the more valuable part? Okay. Raise your hand if you find the masterminding and the networking to be the more valuable part. Okay. Now how about, and I know now you're going to choose two categories, who's for both? Who really likes both? Okay. Interesting. I think it's really important to have both, but I was just wondering what you were interested in. So we're going to start off this session by talking about personal productivity, getting more done with less time and effort, becoming more efficient, becoming more effective. Here are a few quotes to start off with. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. Sun Tzu said that. Great strategist. Here's another. Next to knowing when to seize an opportunity, the most important thing in life is to know when to forego an opportunity. Benjamin Disraeli. The essence of genius is to know what to overlook. William James. These are three relatively significant historical and kind of literary figures. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. What does that imply? It implies that if you keep growing, the amount of opportunity you have right now is nothing compared to what's coming. Ralph on our team, who is a very wise man, a couple of years ago I said, "Wow, Ralph, things are really taking off. Business is going to the next level. I can really sense like we're transitioning into another realm. And the opportunity, we're going through some kind of weird experience right now. It's a vortex. All of these people are coming to us and wanting to work with us and coming out of the woodwork, companies wanting to do deals with us, and it's amazing. We need to look around and take advantage of this." And he said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." And it shifted my mindset in that moment. And I thought, wow, this is just the beginning of this. If we keep going, there's going to be even more opportunity and more opportunity. And that's what happens. And I realized that the problem in business is not figuring out how to take advantage of all the opportunity, which is what we all try to do. The problem in business is how, in the face of all this massive opportunity that's coming in, figuring out how to narrow your focus. Pay attention to fewer, more important things while there are more and more of them coming at you. Remember, man who chases 2 rabbits catches none? What about when you have 47 rabbits? Or 1,200 rabbits? And I thought these other 2 quotes, it's taken me a long time to find these quotes to realize that other people have been saying these things. When you read something like, next to knowing when to seize an opportunity, the most important thing in life is to know when to forego an opportunity. When you read that, it's easy to say, oh yeah, that's one of those cute quote things that's out of a quote book. Except that this was a very sophisticated, evolved, important person that said this. The essence of genius is to know what to overlook. This is William James. Without him, kind of modern psychology wouldn't have happened that way. Opportunity can be a big problem. It can be a huge problem. And in fact, I would say that opportunity, or the appearance of opportunity, distracts and hurts entrepreneurs more than problems, because we're trying to take advantage of all of them. So we're moving to phase 2 right now, and a lesson that I want to share with you that I learned in phase 2 is the power of developing your team. In my case, it was the power of developing my team. And we do, inside of our business, what we call team training calls, or now they're just called the team call. And once a week, we all get on a call. Our company happens to be virtual, so we do it on the telephone. Some companies do these types of things in person. We get on a team training call. And on the calls, I and now other people on our team do the trainings for the entire group. And we train each other. We train ourselves. And what I would do is get everyone on the phone, and I would say, what I'd like to do is share with you for maybe 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, share with you a lesson that I've learned. And in fact, a lot of the material that you'll see here in Altitude, these are the types of things that I would teach on these calls as I was learning and developing these things, learning from books, learning from other people, learning the lessons myself in business. What's the best way to learn something? Well, maybe to do it, but teaching it is pretty good too. And what I've found is that if I learn something and I immediately go teach it to someone else, somehow it changes the way it's coded or wired inside of my mind. Really. Like, it's not the same in there anymore. It actually does something to it. And I've talked to a lot of experts about this, and no one's been able to hook up a brain scanning device and see what your brain does when it goes into teaching mode and then show you exactly how the neurons fire differently, although someone will probably do it soon. But something happens in there that makes the brain work a little bit differently. And so I recommend that what you do is you take the material that you're learning here and other material that you're learning outside, and once a week, once every 2 weeks, get your team together, even if it's on a telephone call, and even if it's short, even if it's for 15 minutes, and say, I want to teach you something. I want to teach you something that I learned about how to make your own life better. And if you can focus a lot of the material on the personal life of other individuals, you can go very far. If you focus on making the personal life of your team and the people that are on your team better, and you care about their personal lives, and you insist that they have great personal lives, then on the team training calls during business hours when they're getting paid, you say, hey, let me teach you how to have a better personal life, how to be more effective. It creates a particular type of connection and bond between you and them and between the group that is incredibly powerful. And it's one of those things that, even though it is self-serving, because you are trying to grow these people so that they can help grow the group, it's one of those magical things, you only get a few of these really in life, where you can do it, you can tell everyone what you're doing, you can say, I want you to have a great personal life so that you really enjoy what you're doing inside the business, so that we all succeed together, where it's very win-win-win. There's nothing hidden, there's nothing weird about it, and everyone really enjoys it. We're helping each other. We're here to learn from each other. And I particularly recommend that you take some of the lessons that you're going to learn in this session and use those to start with, because these things tend to resonate with just about everyone, and everyone can relate and get some value from this material. So take this, chop it up, and teach it to your team. In fact, if you want to learn this material 5 times as well, 7 times as well, 10 times as well, you want to master this material, the best thing you can do is teach it to your team. Teach it to your team. Say that with me. Teach it to your team. For you, say, teach it to my team. Teach it to my team. Say it. Teach it to my team. Teach it to my team. So what's the best thing you can do with this material? Good. Teach it to my team. Just write that down. Say it to yourself a little bit. Teach it to my team. I got to teach it to my team. It's a great little phrase. It's memorable. Teach it to my team. Teach it to my team. If you learn something and you like it, put a little star next to it. Teach it to my team. Got to teach it to my team. There's a great state or place to be in, psychologically and emotionally, experientially. Some people refer to it as the zone. Some people call it flow, the flow state. And it's that experience of total involvement, of engagement. And when it happens, when it's on, you lose track of time, you lose track of problems, you're not worrying about anything, and you're also typically evolving, growing, making something happen. Barry Sears wrote a book called Enter the Zone. It's a diet and nutrition book, and I kind of got into that whole way of thinking in the past. I've since modified it a lot, and just like anything else, I've taken what's valuable and thrown away what's not. And he pointed out that there are things you can do physiologically to get into the zone, and you can balance your meals, and you can do various things so that physically your body is processing optimally. And that book was the thing that kind of just keyed me into the idea that if I eat certain foods or eat foods in a certain way, that it can affect my physical energy. And if I don't eat foods in a certain way, it can screw up my physical energy or my zone. And he actually suggests that the way you eat makes a difference about whether you feel like you're in the zone or not. Well, I've learned since then that that zone or that flow state can happen physically, it can happen emotionally, and it can happen logically, and it can even happen on what you might think of as higher levels. There's another book that is a very interesting book about this stuff, and it's called Flow. And a guy named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and don't ask me how to spell that because it's the most bizarrely spelled name in the history of publishing. And in this book, he talks about what he calls optimal experience and getting completely engrossed in something, right? Getting totally dialed into something. And he says people that play chess often report that when they're in the middle of a chess game, they're just completely absorbed in the chess game. Or people that are reading, they get completely absorbed into the reading and time flies by. Well, it can also happen in work. It can also happen when you're doing your best work. So I believe that you can port over or bring some of this zone or flow state into your work. And I think that if you're conscious of this and you think, okay, how can I get more of that into my work so that I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I'm enjoying the journey, and then what can I do to get my team in this state more? I think you can make a huge difference inside your company, especially long term. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but some of the things that you can do are don't let people do things that they don't like to do, and don't let people do things that they're bad at. If someone's not good at a certain thing and you keep trying to make them do it, what do you think is going to happen? Well, they're going to feel bad about it because they're going to know, I'm not really that good at that thing, and I don't really like doing that thing, and but okay, well, I'll do it. And then they're not going to do a very good job, and it's not going to feel that good. On the other hand, if you say, even once in a while, even if you do this just a little bit to start, if you show up once a week or a couple of times a month and you just say, you know what, I noticed you're doing this thing over here, don't really worry about that. focus on this thing where you're strong. And you just encourage people to stay in that place. You can do a lot getting people here. And I think what you find is that if you're concerned about people being in that state, in flow or in the zone, working from their strengths and their talents, and you're constantly just nudging people and pushing the situation and doing it with yourself, everyone can become more fulfilled. Everyone can become more productive together. And eventually what can happen is your whole business can start operating this way. This is a little bit out there, and you really have to experience it to, I think, understand it. But once all the wires get hooked up and everyone's operating from this place, it's almost as if your business can start to have a talent, and your business can start to have a strength with everyone working together. This can really happen. And everyone can become more fulfilled through their work. And in fact, if you do it the right way, part of my experience is that sometimes people get so into their work and they get so involved and so engaged that you have to say to them, you know what, stop working so much. Go take some time off, go relax, go unplug. Which is, I think, what we're all trying to achieve in a lot of ways, is to have teams that are so inspired that they want to help our business grow, and they're so healthy that they want to grow personally. Another thing that I've learned in the past, the metaphor is, in a garden, weeds grow automatically. You don't have to do anything for the weeds to grow. Peter Drucker has a great quote about this that I'll probably read to you later, about how friction and problems grow in your business automatically. You don't need to do anything about that. If you want to grow a beautiful garden, that is what you have to pay attention to. You have to plant, you have to water, you have to weed. Going and pulling out the weeds, that may not be the most fun part, but it's really important if you want to have a great garden. Another piece of this, too, that's, I think, very interesting about human behavior and psychology is that the influences that we have around us program us whether we want them to or not. This is I'm really convicted about that. I really believe that. The influences we have around us, they program us whether we're aware of it or not. And that's why, in most cases, when someone comes to a little transformational program and they go to the live program, they get all pumped up and they go home and they start telling everyone what they learned, and what does everyone in their life say? That sounds like, are you selling multi-level marketing again? Or, what? You're going to try real estate again? You know what? Something's going on here. You're going to start going to that weird church down the road? Something wrong with you. Come on, be normal. And what does everyone do behind your back? Make fun of you. They talk about you and how you're on your weird kick right now. I remember when I was younger, some of the conversations that would happen, around my family. I don't know about everybody here, but I'll bet almost everyone here has figured this out themselves. We all come from regular, normal backgrounds, and we just, created our business, made ourselves successful. But some of my own, now I see in retrospect, but some of my own challenges came from the reality that doing things like getting healthy and exercising every day, just that one idea, exercising every day, or, God forbid, going to a gym and exercising every day, was really viewed as being, you're kind of a little bit of an extreme health nut. There's really got to be something wrong with you if you go down to a gym every day. It would almost be like, oh yeah, they go down to the gym every day and pump iron. Implying that there's something weird about that and something really wrong with you, like you've got this screw loose. And so, and then while everyone's making fun of you, they're passing the box of Twinkies and talking about all the problems that they have and how their boss sucks and their kids are a mess and whatever. The connect is never made. If you don't do this stuff proactively, if you do not surround yourself by like-minded individuals on a regular basis and let those negative connections go, Sometimes it's difficult, but you got to do it. Just let them go. I'm not saying calling everybody up and saying, you're a negative influence on my life and I don't love you anymore. Just saying, just let go of them. Don't keep pulling them in. Let those go and then start planting positive seeds in your garden that will grow automatically. Those connections will grow. It'll start taking up more and more of your time. The positive influence will start a feed-forward loop, and it'll just keep working. And then you'll get into that great state, but you got to stay proactive on it, and you've got to stay with it, because you just let a couple of negative influences in, and then the next thing you know, you're pessimistic again. You're back to your old self. That's another great little trick of human psychology, that those circuits that you have from a long time ago that you haven't even thought about, they're still in there. And they're just waiting to get fired back up. All those bad behaviors that you've done in the past that aren't you anymore, they're just waiting for the right influence to come and, affect you so you go, oh yeah, whatever, I don't have to worry about that anymore. So surround yourself with positive role models and positive influences and stay submerged and do it proactively. You need to build your own mastermind group and, take charge of planting your own seeds and tending your own garden. So now let's talk about what prevents us from entering this zone or this flow state. One thing, multitasking. We talked a lot about this yesterday. Multitasking is not only distracting and puts you all over the map, but it's also very inefficient. Multitasking turns out in business to be very inefficient in most cases. There will always be exceptions, and most of the things that I'm talking about here are generalities, just like that statement. My good friend Dean Jackson, who you're going to meet here in a couple of days, one of the smartest guys in marketing, one of the smartest thinkers I've ever met personally in my life, period. We sat down a couple of years ago, and he said, here, try this. And he wrote down a list of, I think it was 10 short multiplication problems. And then he wrote down 10 short division problems, as I recall. And it was like 9 divided by 3 and 27 divided by 9, whatever. And he said, okay, do that. And he pulled out his watch, and I did all the problems. And then he wrote out another list, and this time the multiplication problems and division problems were randomly mixed together. And he timed how long it took me to do them. And it took, I don't remember what it was, but 20% longer, or 50% longer for me to do the list where they were one after the other, where they were mixed up. And then he said, I read this article that said that when your brain has to shift gears back and forth, even on something this simple, it takes a while. It takes a while to shift. Interesting. I read some research that said, I don't remember where this was, but it said something to the effect of, if you get distracted, you get taken off track from what you're working on in business, it typically takes something like 20 or 30 minutes before you come back to the thing you were working on. Now, how much does that shifting of gears cost you in terms of efficiency? What's the price of that shift back and forth? I think it's very high. And I think that compounded over time, that it's just like when you hear, if you start saving $1 a day from 20 years before you were born, at the end of your life, you'll be a millionaire, or whatever it is. But if you wait till you're 20 to start saving $1 a day, you'll have a fraction of the overall result. I think it's the same here. Efficiency compounds on itself. If you become really, really efficient, that's like 10 times more powerful than just efficient. And multitasking is a very inefficient way to go, in most cases. A gentleman that I know named Tim Ferriss, very, very smart guy, becoming very popular with his book, The 4-Hour Workweek. He wrote a post to his blog, and it said something to the effect of, pot smoking lowers IQ less than your BlackBerry. And then he cited this article that showed that they tested people who were who were multitasking, checking email and checking their BlackBerries while at work, and then people who were just working, they weren't checking their email BlackBerry, and then they tested people who had smoked pot. And the people who had smoked pot, their IQ was dropped less than by the people who were multitasking. Fascinating. Maybe multitasking is a way of getting high and we don't know it. Never really thought of it that way. Maybe we need to start Multitaskers Anonymous. A new phenomenon that has emerged recently, and it is new. I talked to Ned Hallowell, the author of Crazy Busy, about this. I brought it up and discussed it, and he said, yeah, this is something brand new, something we've never seen before in psychology. I think a woman from Microsoft came up with this. They're calling it continual partial attention. Continual partial attention. And continual partial attention is when your mind has something that it's thinking about and processing on and keeping track of and monitoring and kind of being vigilant about all the time, and it never turns off. Do you know what I'm talking about? Might be some part of your business, might be a report or some stats that you've got to keep checking. It might be relationships with a few people, and you just can never unplug. You're like, I got to be available to them anytime, because what if they call? Continual partial attention. Now, it's new, so we don't really know what this is doing, but I'll bet that it's doing a lot of bad. I'll bet it's doing a lot of harm. Just like when you're running your computer, we had a problem we've been working on with one of our computers for this week, and last night Den figured out that it just wasn't running right. It was running really slow, so he went into the little box where you can turn off individual programs. You press Control-Alt-Delete on a Mac and shows all the processes that are running. You can turn them off individually. And he just started shutting stuff down. And he shut one thing down. He didn't even know what any of it was. He's just like, maybe there's something running on here. He shut one thing down, and boom, all of a sudden, the performance was there. One little thing running, taking up too much memory. So are you paying continual partial attention to something that's just robbing you of your energy, keeping you out of the zone and keeping you out of flow? Because you're always thinking about it, you can't let it go?